Ladies and gentlemen, there's something sacred about those hours between 3 and 5 in the morning. While the world sleeps, your spirit is awake. That's not insomnia, my sister. That's divine interruption. That's heaven knocking on the door of your destiny saying, "Jet up, daughter." There's something I need to tell you. Those hours are not a coincidence. They are a spiritual appointment. The kind that doesn't appear on your calendar, but is written in the language of your calling. You wake up and feel that restlessness in your chest, that tug in your heart, not because you're tired, but because God is stirring something inside of you. Maybe you've been wondering why peace feels like it comes and goes, why you're awake while everyone else is asleep. It's because God can't speak in the noise you live in during the day, so He calls you in the quiet. He doesn't need your performance, your makeup, polished answers. He needs your attention. Those early hours are not about worry, they're about alignment. He's not trying to disturb your rest. He's trying to reposition your purpose. You've been praying for a breakthrough, and what you don't realize is that the breakthrough is waking you up. Heaven is open. Between 3 and 5, the veil is thin. Your spirit is sensitive. That's the time when your future starts whispering your name. That's when divine ideas are planted like seeds in the soil of your mind. But if you turn over, sigh, and go back to sleep, you miss the message. So you wake up in those hours. Don't reach for your phone. Don't scroll through someone else's life. Reach for your peace. Reach for your journal. Reach for the voice that called your name in the dark. That's not random. That's revelation. Because women who wake up between 3 and 5 a.m. are not ordinary women. They are women being summoned. They are being trained in silence, strengthened in solitude, and prepared for visibility. He's preparing you for something bigger than where you are now. You think you're just tired, but you're actually in transition. You think you're restless, but you're being reawakened. You think you're breaking, but you're really becoming. There's something God wants to show you before the sun rises, something about your next season, your next step, your next self. So stop calling it sleeplessness. Start calling it summoning. You're not restless. You're receiving revelation. There are moments in life that feel inconvenient but are in truth sacred. Moments when you are pulled out of your sleep between 3 and 5 a.m., staring into the stillness of the night, wondering why your mind won't quiet down, why your soul feels heavy, why your heart feels stirred. You may roll over and whisper, "Why now? Why can't I just rest?" But what if this isn't restlessness? What if it's a divine appointment? See, when heaven schedules a meeting, it doesn't check your calendar. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It simply calls. And the call doesn't always come at a convenient time. God doesn't always move during the hours you plan. Sometimes He interrupts your night because your spirit is more awake in silence than it is in the daylight noise. You think you're losing sleep, but heaven is whispering, "Daughter, wake up. I need to speak to you." Those early hours are sacred ground. While the rest of the world sleeps, heaven is still moving. Angels are being dispatched. Ideas are being planted. The blueprint of your next season is being drawn. And because you've been asking, "God, speak to me, show me what to do," He wakes you when you are quiet enough to listen. He doesn't speak to busy hearts. He speaks to surrendered ones. It's easy to label it a disturbance. It's easy to think, "Why can't I rest like everyone else?" But restlessness is sometimes revelation in disguise. When God is ready to shift you, He often begins by unsettling you. You can't stay in the same rhythm and receive a new revelation. So He interrupts what is normal to introduce what is new. You may not understand it at first. Those interruptions are invitations, sacred appointments that your soul made before your body even knew it needed them. He's not trying to keep you tired. He's trying to keep you tuned. You've been surrounded by so much noise. The opinions, the expectations, the endless scrolling, the rush of every day, that He has to call you out of it. Between 3 and 5 a.m., the noise is gone, the phone is quiet, the world is still, and it's just you and Him. That's where alignment happens. That's where strength is restored, clarity is received, and direction is downloaded. Maybe you've been feeling like something's missing, like your spirit is unsettled. emptiness. That's the divine invitation to go deeper. Sometimes God wakes you because there's a word he wants to plant in your heart before the world can distract you. You think it's an interruption. It's an encounter. He's not disturbing your peace, he's delivering it. Every time in Scripture when God called someone, he rarely chose convenient moments. He called Moses from a burning bush, not from a palace. He called Samuel in the middle of the night, not during a worship service. He spoke to Joseph through dreams that interrupted his sleep. He moves in the inconvenient because it reveals your willingness. Will you answer the call when it's quiet, when no one else sees, when there's no applause, only presence? That's what these early morning awakenings are about. They're not meant to drain you. They're meant to draw you. God draws near in the silence, in the stillness, in the space where your flesh resists, but your spirit responds. He wants your raw heart, your unfiltered prayers, your unmasked self. That's why he comes when you're not performing, when you're half asleep, unguarded, and honest. If you shift your perspective, you'll see that those moments are actually love letters from heaven. It's as if God is saying, I missed our time. I want to talk to you before the world gets to you. I want to remind you of who you are before you step into another day filled with demands and distractions. And when you answer that call, when you rise, even if just to whisper, I'm listening, something shifts. The atmosphere around you becomes holy. The same quiet that felt heavy begins to feel holy. You may not hear a loud voice. You may not receive instant answers, but sometimes it's not about information. It's about intimacy. He's not always trying to tell you what to do next. Sometimes he just wants you near because your nearness to him determines your strength in the day ahead. There's a reason it's called a divine appointment and not a divine convenience. Appointments are intentional. They are scheduled for purpose. You don't accidentally show up to an appointment. You attend it. And if God is waking you, it's because something about your next season requires early preparation. There's something he wants to strengthen before you step forward, something he wants to remove before you rise, something he wants to reveal before you return to your routine. So the next time you find yourself awake between 3 and 5 a.m., don't grumble, grow. Don't complain, commune. Don't see it as punishment, see it as preparation. You are being trained to listen, to discern, to move when heaven moves. He's building your sensitivity. He's sharpening your spiritual hearing. And the more you respond, the clearer his voice becomes. There's something deeply intimate about being chosen in the quiet. You're not forgotten. You're being trusted. You're not restless. You're being refined. The world may not understand it. They'll say you need rest, that you're overthinking. But they don't hear what you hear. They don't know the pull you feel. They can't sense the sacred tug of destiny that wakes you before dawn. When you start seeing these moments as appointments instead of interruptions, everything changes. You begin to prepare for them. You keep a journal near your bed because you expect revelation. You approach those hours with reverence instead of frustration. You start saying, Lord, what are you showing me? Instead of, why can't I sleep? You start to understand that divine timing doesn't follow your sleep cycle. It follows your spiritual sensitivity. And one day you'll look back and realize that those 3 a.m. encounters shaped you more than any sermon, conference, or conversation ever could. You'll realize that what felt like the most inconvenient moments were actually the most important ones. Because in those quiet hours, heaven downloaded strategy. In those dark mornings, God healed something in you. In those still moments, you found strength you didn't know you had. When you rise to meet him in the stillness, you'll find peace waiting in the silence. You'll discover that the presence you feel in those hours is not random. It's relational. Heaven has chosen to visit you privately before it blesses you publicly. That's what a divine appointment is. It's not about losing sleep. It's about gaining purpose. And when morning comes and the world begins to wake, you'll move differently. You'll walk with quiet strength, speak with soft confidence, and carry a peace that others can't quite explain. Because you'll know before the sun rose, before the day began, you had an appointment with heaven and you showed up. There is something deeply sacred about the quiet hours. Those still, hurried moments when the world hasn't yet awakened and the air itself feels hushed. Between 3 and 5 a.m., there is a silence that speaks. It's not the absence of sound. It's the presence of stillness. It's as though heaven lowers its voice, and in that hush, your spirit finally begins to listen. During the day, life is loud. You're pulled in 100 directions, constantly surrounded by conversation, noise, and distraction. The mind becomes crowded with tasks, emotions, and expectations. You spend the day responding to messages, to people, to circumstances. In the night, especially in those quiet early hours, all those demands fade away. The world sleeps, and suddenly you can hear your own soul again. This is why the quiet hours carry clarity, because clarity never competes with noise. It doesn't shout over chaos, it waits for calm. God doesn't pour wisdom into a storming mind. He waits until the waves settle. That's why the stillness of early morning is not just peaceful, it's purposeful. It's designed to give your heart space to receive truth without interference. You see, clarity is not something you chase, it's something you uncover. It's always been there, buried beneath the noise of worry, the clutter of business, the weight of trying to figure everything out. But when you rise in the quiet hours, when the world is asleep and you sit in the stillness, the fog begins to lift. Suddenly, what felt complicated starts to feel simple. What felt overwhelming begins to make sense. Many people underestimate silence. They think clarity comes from more information, more advice, more opinions. But true clarity doesn't come from others. It comes from alignment, and alignment happens when you can finally hear the voice within you that has been drowned out by everything else. It's in those moments, before sunrise, that your heart whispers truths that daylight often silences. The quiet hours have a way of stripping you back to what's real. There's no pretense, no performance, no noise to hide behind. It's just you, your thoughts, and God. That's where honesty begins. That's where decisions are born from peace instead of pressure. When you sit in stillness, you don't just hear your thoughts, you begin to discern the difference between your fears and your faith. In the silence, you start to see patterns, not of chaos, but of divine order. You realize that the things you called delays were actually protection. The things you thought were rejections were redirections. That's clarity. Not just understanding your circumstances, seeing them through the lens of purpose. And that kind of clarity doesn't come in crowded rooms, it comes in quiet ones. Have you ever noticed that when the world is dark and still, your mind feels sharper? The thoughts that were blurry in the evening suddenly feel focused. That's not coincidence, that's divine design. Your spirit is more awake when your environment is still. The quiet hours are when heaven downloads strategy, revelation, and reassurance. It's where you begin to receive answers to questions you didn't even know how to ask during the day. It's in the quiet that you can finally differentiate between what you want and what you need, between what feels urgent and what is truly important. Clarity comes when you stop trying to fix everything and start allowing wisdom to rise within you. The truth is, many of us pray for answers but never create space to hear them. We want guidance, but we live surrounded by constant noise. Yet God's voice doesn't compete with chaos. It waits for quiet. So when you find yourself awake in those early hours, don't see it as an inconvenience. See it as an invitation. The quiet hours are not an accident. They are appointments for awareness. That's when divine perspective unfolds, when your purpose begins to come into focus. Sometimes you don't even need to say a word, just being still, just breathing. Just being present opens a spiritual channel you didn't know you had. You may start to notice things you missed before. Not because they weren't there, because you finally slowed down enough to see them. You'll sense gratitude rising where anxiety once lived. You'll feel peace settling where confusion used to reign. That's the power of quiet clarity. It reorders your heart before you even realize it. The quiet hours also expose what truly matters. When everything external is silent, the internal speaks louder. You begin to see which relationships drain you and which ones feed your spirit. You discern which dreams are truly yours and which ones were built from comparison. You realize that clarity is not just about knowing what to do. It's about knowing who you are when everything else is stripped away. There's a reason prophets, writers, and spiritual seekers throughout history have always valued early mornings in solitude. They understood that revelation rarely comes in the rush. Wisdom prefers the whisper. Inspiration visits those who listen. You don't have to force it. You just have to be available. The quiet hours are where divine insight finds an open door. Sometimes clarity comes not in words, but in peace. You may not get an exact answer, but you'll feel a release, a knowing in your heart that you can't explain but can't deny. That's God speaking without speaking. That's direction without detail. That's the kind of clarity that comes only when you stop striving to understand everything and start trusting the stillness. In those moments, you begin to realize that clarity is not a destination, it's a rhythm. It's something that flows into your life as you create space for it. When you make peace with silence, you make room for revelation. Once you've tasted that clarity, you'll protect it. You'll no longer crave noise to fill your days because you'll know that everything important begins in the quiet. You'll start to notice that you carry that stillness into your daily life. The same peace that found you at 4 a.m. begins to walk with you at noon. The same insight that whispered in the dark begins to guide you in the light. Because once you've seen clearly in the quiet, you can no longer be confused in the crowd. That's why the quiet hours are so sacred. They reset your vision. They realign your priorities. They remind you that wisdom doesn't shout. It softly waits for the ones willing to listen. So, when the world sleeps and your eyes open, don't fight it. Sit up, breathe, whisper, speak, I'm listening. Let clarity come. Let peace fill the room. Because in the end, the quiet hours are not about isolation. They're about illumination. They remind you that the answers you seek are not hiding somewhere far away. They've been within you all along, waiting for you to pause long enough to hear them. The quiet hours carry clarity because stillness is sacred. It's the meeting place between your humanity and heaven's whisper. It's the moment your confusion bows to peace, your fear bows to faith, and your uncertainty bows to divine understanding. So guard those moments. Don't rush them. Don't overlook them. The world may see them as emptiness. You'll know the truth that in those quiet hours, when everything else fades away, that's where the voice of clarity speaks loudest. There comes a season in every woman's life when peace feels distant, when sleep feels shallow, and when your soul keeps stirring for no clear reason. You go through your day doing what you've always done, yet something within you feels unsettled. You can't explain it, but you know something is shifting. Restlessness you feel, that tension in your spirit, that sense that something is about to change. It's not chaos, it's confirmation. It's heaven's way of letting you know that you are being prepared for your next chapter. Restlessness is not always a sign of weakness or worry. Sometimes it's the language of transition. It's what happens when your spirit outgrows your surroundings. You start feeling uncomfortable in places that once felt familiar. You lose interest in conversations that used to excite you. You start noticing that what once satisfied you now leaves you empty. That's not confusion, that's growth. Your inner world is preparing for what your outer world hasn't yet caught up to. You see, when God begins to shift your life, He doesn't always announce it with trumpets or lightning. Often He starts by stirring your peace. He allows a divine uneasiness to rise up in you, not to frustrate you, but to focus you. The very thing you call discomfort might be God's way of saying, daughter, it's time to move. When your heart starts to ache for something more, the life that once fit you suddenly feels too small. That's readiness knocking. Restlessness is the seed of transformation. It's the sign that something inside you refuses to settle for ordinary anymore. It's heaven's gentle nudge reminding you that you were created for purpose, not just routine. The unease you feel is not punishment, it's preparation. You are being stretched, refined, and repositioned for what's next. Though it feels uncomfortable, it's necessary. Growth never happens in comfort. It happens in the tension between where you've been and where you're called to go. Think about a butterfly in its cocoon. Before it emerges in beauty, wrestles in silence. That restless movement within the cocoon isn't panic, it's power building up. its wings forming in the dark. That's you. You are wrestling not because something's wrong, but because something new is being formed. The shaking you feel inside isn't the end of you. It's the beginning of what's been waiting to come forth. Sometimes God will make your old season uncomfortable so you'll stop clinging to it. He'll let certain doors close not to hurt you, but to hurry you. He'll make peace leave places that once held you so you'll finally walk into places that were designed to grow you. That restlessness is heaven's signal that your assignment has shifted. You're ready for a new dimension, a new direction, a new depth of purpose. But first, he has to make you aware of your readiness. We often pray for change, but we don't expect the feeling that comes before it. We ask for new beginnings, but forget that every new beginning requires an end. Endings rarely feel calm. They come with emotional turbulence, the restlessness of releasing what was and reaching for what's next. That's why you feel uneasy. Don't rush to fix it. Don't numb it. Don't bury it under distraction. Sit with it. Listen to it, because that restlessness carries wisdom. It's the voice of destiny whispering. You can't stay here anymore. Restlessness also exposes what's been tolerated too long, pulls back the curtain on the places where you've settled for less in your relationships, in your dreams, in your identity. It's God saying, you've been surviving on crumbs. When I prepared a table, when you start to feel uneasy in average spaces, it's because your spirit has glimpsed excellence. When ordinary starts to feel suffocating, it's because greatness is calling your name. You might be tempted to call this season confusion, but it's not confusion. It's clarity awakening. You're beginning to see that what used to align with you no longer does. You're recognizing the difference between business and purpose, between people who celebrate you and those who only tolerate you. That awareness can feel lonely, but it's holy. It's part of your becoming. God removes your comfort so you can rediscover your calling. Restlessness also requires trust, because when you can't see the full picture, it's easy to mistake movement for chaos. But sometimes things have to shake before they settle. The storm in your soul is not meant to destroy you. It's meant to direct you. It's heaven rearranging your internal landscape so that when opportunity comes, you're ready to receive it. You can't carry yesterday's mindset into tomorrow's miracle. So God uses restlessness as a refining fire, not to burn you, but to build you. You may not realize it, but you're standing in between two versions of yourself, who you were and who you're becoming. The space between the two feels uncertain, and that uncertainty creates restlessness. But it's in that in between that the greatest growth occurs. It's where you learn to trust what you can't yet see, to believe in what hasn't yet manifested. It's where faith matures. Restlessness also breaks routine. It shakes you out of autopilot and forces you to ask deeper questions. What am I really doing with my life? Why do I feel unfulfilled? What is God trying to show me through this? Those questions are sacred because they point you toward transformation. They awaken you to purpose that routine once buried. When you finally surrender to it, when you stop fighting the unease and start flowing with it, restlessness becomes revelation. You begin to understand that it's not here to torment you, it's here to teach you. It's showing you where you've outgrown, what you've outlived, who you've become. It's God saying, you're ready, even if you don't feel ready. That's the paradox of preparation. You rarely feel ready when you actually are. Readiness doesn't always feel like confidence. Sometimes it feels like tension. But heaven knows when you've matured enough to handle the next level. When that moment comes, peace leaves your current space because purpose is calling you to another. So the next time you feel that uneasiness in your spirit, don't rush to silence it. Don't mistake your restlessness for rebellion or weakness. Instead, pause and ask, what is this trying to show me? Because restlessness is never random. It's revelation wrapped in discomfort. It's God stirring the waters of your life so that the old debris can rise to the surface and be cleared away. Your restlessness is your readiness. It means your faith is outgrowing fear. Your dreams are outgrowing your doubts. Your calling is outgrowing your comfort zone. The unease you feel is the echo of your next season calling you to rise. You're not falling apart. You're being reassembled. You're not losing direction, you're being redirected. Don't despise this season. Don't curse the restlessness, honor it. It's holy ground. It's the spiritual contraction that precedes your birth into something greater. The same way a mother feels pressure before delivery, your soul feels tension before transformation. It hurts, but it's necessary. It's not the end. It's evidence that you're close to something new. When your spirit stirs, when your peace feels disrupted, when your heart aches for more, lean in, breathe, pray, listen. Because that restlessness is heaven's way of saying, you're ready now. You've learned what you needed to learn. It's time to move into what I've been preparing you for. Restlessness isn't the enemy of peace. It's the doorway to purpose. It's the divine announcement that you've outgrown your old season and heaven has already started building your new one. So rise with courage. You are not losing control, you're gaining clarity. You are not breaking down, you're breaking through. And when you finally step into the new space that was waiting for you all along, you'll look back and realize the restlessness wasn't punishment, it was prophecy. It wasn't confusion, it was confirmation. It was the whisper of destiny saying, you were ready long before you believed you were. There comes a time in your life when you realize that simply repeating what you've always done no longer fulfills you. You wake up, go through your day, meet expectations, and yet something in your spirit feels unsatisfied. You're functioning but not flourishing. You're consistent but not connected. That's because your soul was never created to survive on routine alone. You were made to live by revelation, divine insight that breathes purpose into your every step. Routine keeps you moving, but revelation keeps you becoming. Routine can organize your day, but revelation transforms your destiny. There's a difference between waking up because it's morning and waking up because you've heard something in your spirit that tells you it's time to rise. There's a difference between living out a habit and living out a hearing. One keeps you safe, the other makes you alive. So many people spend their lives trapped in the rhythm of repetition, doing what they've always done, saying what they've always said, following what everyone else follows, and then wonder why their spirit feels empty. That emptiness is not failure, it's a signal. It's your spirit whispering, I was made for more than this. Routine is predictable. Revelation is powerful. Routine tells you what to do next. Revelation tells you why you're doing it. Routine can keep you productive, but revelation makes you purposeful. Without revelation, life becomes mechanical. You wake up, work, eat, sleep, repeat, but there's no meaning in the motion. It's like breathing without feeling the air, existing without truly living. When revelation enters, everything ordinary becomes holy. You begin to see that nothing is random and that even your small actions carry eternal purpose. Revelation doesn't always come with fireworks or loud voices. Sometimes it comes in a whisper, a nudge in your heart that says, there's something more. It's that quiet awareness that pulls you out of autopilot and back into alignment. It's when God breaks into your routine to remind you that He's not done revealing Himself through your life. Every great transformation in Scripture happened when routine was interrupted by revelation. Moses was tending sheep in the desert, just another ordinary day, when a bush caught fire and refused to burn. In that moment, revelation replaced routine. His ordinary assignment became divine calling. Mary was living her normal life when an angel showed up and said, "You've been chosen." Peter was fishing, doing what he did every day, when Jesus said, "Follow me." Revelation disrupts comfort. It replaces repetition with purpose. It shifts your focus from, what am I doing, to what is God doing through me? That's why you should never despise divine interruptions. Sometimes God will disturb your schedule to reveal your destiny. He will let your plans fall apart to show you His greater plan. When you're too attached to routine, you risk missing revelation. You can become so focused on what you're used to that you overlook what's being revealed right in front of you. Routine can make you efficient. It can also make you numb. You start going through the motions without feeling the meaning. Revelation wakes you up. It breathes life back into your habits, purpose back into your prayers, power back into your praise. Turns I have to into I get to. It shifts your perspective from obligation to opportunity. You no longer live by duty. You live by direction. The truth is, God often hides revelation in the middle of routine, not to frustrate you, but to test your attentiveness. He wants to see if you can still sense his whisper in the familiar. He doesn't always reveal new things in new places. Sometimes he reveals them in old ones, in the very places you stopped expecting them. The question is, are you paying attention? You might be walking through your daily routine right now, wondering why nothing feels new. You've prayed, you've worked, you've waited, and yet your soul feels stagnant. But what if the revelation you've been praying for isn't somewhere far away? What if it's hidden in what you're already doing? The same sunrise you see every day can look completely different when revelation opens your eyes. The same work that once felt repetitive can become divine when you realize you're not just working. You're building something eternal. Revelation changes the way you move. It makes you intentional. It teaches you that your time, your words, your relationships, all of it carries spiritual weight. You stop chasing distractions because revelation has focused your vision. You start hearing divine instruction where others only hear silence. You start seeing miracles where others only see monotony. The danger of routine is that it convinces you to settle. It whispers, stay where you are. Don't risk it. Don't change. But revelation will always challenge you to step out. It tells you there's more in you. There's more ahead. There's more to be revealed. Revelation shakes you out of comfort because purpose doesn't grow in the predictable. It grows in the uncertain. And yet, revelation doesn't dismiss discipline. It gives discipline meaning. It doesn't reject routine. It redeems it. There's a balance. Routine is the structure. Revelation is the spirit. Routine gives you stability. Revelation gives you significance. Without routine, you lack order. Without revelation, you lack life. Two must work together. You prepare through discipline, but you progress through revelation. The greatest danger of living without revelation is spiritual sleep. You can be alive but unaware. You can be moving but not advancing. That's why God sometimes shakes your world, not to destroy it, but to wake you up. He interrupts what's predictable to reintroduce what's powerful. The job may change, the friendship may end, the door may close, and you'll wonder why. But often that's revelation replacing routine. God is saying, you've mastered this season. Now it's time to hear something new. When you live by revelation, you no longer fear change. You begin to trust that every shift carries divine purpose. You stop clinging to what's familiar because you know that comfort is not your calling, growth is. You realize that when God gives revelation, he's not just informing you, he's transforming you. He's expanding your capacity to see through his eyes and move with his wisdom. Living by revelation means being open to instruction, open to transformation, open to divine redirection. It means you no longer chase validation. You chase vision. You stop performing and start perceiving. You start asking, Lord, what are you showing me here? What do you want me to learn from this? You stop reacting out of habit and start responding out of hearing. When you begin to walk like that, guided not by routine, but by revelation, life becomes rich again. You start feeling God in the smallest details. You notice his presence in conversations, his timing in delays, his lessons in pain. Suddenly, everything has meaning. You realize that revelation was never meant to come just once. It's meant to come daily. It's manna for your soul. It's daily bread for your spirit. So if you're feeling trapped in repetition, if every day feels the same, ask heaven for revelation. Ask God to open your eyes to what you've stopped seeing. Because revelation won't always change your surroundings, but it will always change how you see them. When revelation steps in, your ordinary day becomes extraordinary. Your work becomes worship. Your silence becomes strategy. Your waiting becomes wisdom. You begin to walk with confidence because you know you're no longer just living by what's routine. You're living by what's revealed. That's when everything changes, because revelation will always take you further than routine ever could. Routine maintains your life. Revelation multiplies it. Routine keeps you safe. Revelation sets you free. Routine keeps you repeating what is. Revelation awakens you to what can be. And when you start living from revelation, you'll never settle for ordinary again, because you'll know that every day carries divine potential. Every moment is an opportunity to hear heaven's voice saying, "Behold, I am doing a new thing. Can you not perceive it?" There is a sacred power in the seasons no one sees. While the world celebrates public success, heaven values what happens behind closed doors. The truth is, every public victory begins with private preparation. Every voice that carries weight was once silent in hidden places. Every great moment of unveiling is preceded by countless moments of becoming alone, unseen, uncelebrated, and often misunderstood. We live in a culture obsessed with visibility. Everyone wants to be seen, heard, and known. But God doesn't develop leaders in the spotlight. He shapes them in the shadows. The spotlight exposes you, but the secret place equips you. Public platforms test what private preparation has built. If the foundation is weak, visibility will destroy what it was meant to reveal. That's why God hides you before He reveals you. He uses isolation as insulation to strengthen what fame could weaken, to refine what attention could distort. Preparation in private isn't punishment, it's protection. It's where God strips away distraction, pride, and dependence on human validation. It's where you learn to walk by faith and not applause. It's where your character is tested, your motives are purified, and your heart is aligned. You can't skip the hidden season because it's the only place that teaches you how to handle what's coming next. When David was anointed to be king, he didn't go straight to the throne. He went back to the field to shepherd sheep in solitude. That's where his heart was molded. That's where he learned responsibility, patience, and worship. Before he ever faced Goliath publicly, he had already conquered lions and bears privately. His public victory was simply the manifestation of his private training. God often calls you in public, but prepares you in private, because calling announces your potential, but preparation shapes your power. It's easy to crave the stage, but it's wiser to embrace the stillness. Private preparation requires patience, and patience is often uncomfortable. You'll feel overlooked. You'll question your progress. You'll wonder if anyone notices your effort. That's exactly where God does His best work, in the soil of obscurity. The seed never grows in the open, it breaks in the dark. Something powerful happens when you stop rushing to be revealed and start trusting the process of becoming. In the private seasons, God teaches you discipline. He teaches you to show up even when no one is watching. He builds consistency in you, the kind that doesn't depend on recognition. You learn to pray when it's quiet, to serve when it's thankless, to give when it's unseen. That's the training ground of true greatness. Because if you can be faithful when no one claps, you'll be ready when the world watches. The private place is where you confront yourself. It's where God deals with the parts of you that applause can't fix, your insecurities, impatience, fears, and pride. You can't carry old wounds into a new calling. So He heals you in solitude. He separates you to sanctify you. You may not understand it now. The same silence that feels empty is actually sacred. God's greatest work is often invisible until it's unstoppable. Many people want the reward without the refinement. They want the crown without the cave. Every David must pass through a season of preparation that no one sees. The cave seasons teach humility. They remind you that calling doesn't mean instant arrival. You can be chosen and still be in process. God hides His best people until they're ready, not to delay them, but to develop them. Preparation in private also teaches sensitivity to God's voice. When there's no crowd to impress, you learn how to listen. You begin to discern the difference between opportunity and instruction. You stop chasing platforms and start pursuing presence. The private place is not a waiting room, it's a classroom. Every lesson you learn there becomes the wisdom you'll need later. The reason many lose themselves in success is because they skip the silent years that build spiritual stamina. The private season will test your humility. You'll see others rise faster, get recognized sooner, and receive opportunities you thought were yours. Comparison will rob you of the beauty of your own process. God's timing is not delayed, it's deliberate. Just because He's not revealing you doesn't mean He's forgotten you. He's preparing you for something that demands maturity. Some doors require a version of you that doesn't exist yet. and he's crafting that version in private. Think of Jesus himself. Before his public ministry began, he spent 30 years in quiet preparation, 30 years of obscurity for 3 years of impact. Those unseen years were not wasted. They were necessary. He grew in wisdom, stature, and favor long before he ever performed a miracle. His hidden years were the furnace that forged his strength. God never skips the process, even for his son, so why should we? Private preparation also reveals your true source of strength. When you're stripped of audience and approval, you learn to depend solely on God. Your confidence shifts from ability to anointing. You begin to realize that preparation is not just about skill. It's about surrender. It's not about how talented you are, but how teachable you are. The private place humbles you enough to handle glory without arrogance. And when God finally brings you into the public season, you'll understand why the hiding was necessary. You'll see that the waiting wasn't wasted. It was weight training. You were building spiritual muscle. You were learning resilience, wisdom, and discernment. You'll thank God for the doors he didn't open too soon, for the stages he kept you off, for the people he didn't let applaud you prematurely. Because now you know, premature exposure can destroy destiny. Preparation in private is also about stewardship. How you handle small responsibilities determines how you'll handle larger ones. If you can be faithful with a little, God can trust you with more. It's not about impressing people. It's about proving dependable. Excellence in the unseen places builds credibility in the seen ones. What you cultivate in secret becomes what you carry in public. The world rewards speed. God values substance. He is not rushing your process. He's refining your purpose. Every quiet day, every hidden year, every unnoticed effort, it all counts. You're being built into something that can withstand storms. Public applause can't sustain you when pressure comes. Only private preparation can. So, if you feel like you're in a hidden season, don't despise it. Don't rush out of it. Stay faithful. Keep praying. Keep studying. Keep working when no one notices. Heaven sees you. The silence doesn't mean absence. It means construction. You're being prepared for what you prayed for. Or when the time comes, your preparation will speak louder than your introduction. You won't need to prove yourself. Your consistency will testify for you. You'll step into opportunities that fit you perfectly because they were designed for the version of you that was shaped in secret. Never forget, the oil that anoints kings is poured in private before it flows in public. You are being molded, refined, and strengthened for the season that's ahead. What looks like isolation is actually investment. God hides you not to withhold you, but to prepare you. There's a sacred stillness that descends before dawn, a silence that feels alive like the air itself is holding its breath. Between the hours when night begins to fade and the first light brushes against the horizon, something divine stirs. These moments before the world wakes are not empty. They are charged with purpose. It's in that quiet window of time that heaven whispers, softly, intentionally, personally. Every message from above comes with thunder or lightning. Sometimes it arrives like a gentle breath waiting for a listening heart. When the world is asleep, distractions dissolve. The noise that fills our days, the notifications, the conversations, the endless tasks, all go still. And it's in that stillness that your spirit becomes more sensitive, more open, more in tune with the unseen. Heaven speaks differently in the quiet. It doesn't shout, it draws near. Those early hours are not accidental awakenings. They are invitations to communion. God often wakes you not to trouble you, to talk to you. Before the world demands your attention, heaven offers direction. Before you run into the rush of your responsibilities, God offers revelation. That whisper you feel, that gentle stirring of your soul is not random. It's divine timing. The early morning hours are a sacred meeting place between the Creator and the created, between your purpose and His presence. In the busyness of the day, you react, but in the stillness of the morning, you receive. That's when understanding begins to form. The burdens that felt heavy the night before suddenly lighten. The confusion that clouded your thoughts begins to clear. You begin to see not with your eyes, with your spirit. That's the power of heaven's whisper. It doesn't just speak to your mind, it speaks to your being. Many people ignore these sacred awakenings. They toss, turn, and rush back to sleep, unaware that heaven was calling. But those who pause, who sit up, who listen, they catch what others miss. In those hours, heaven doesn't just give answers, it gives alignment. It reminds you of who you are, what you carry, why you can't quit. The whisper is not always loud because it's not meant for the crowd, it's meant for you. When you start to listen, you'll realize that the voice of heaven doesn't always sound like words. Sometimes it's a peace that fills the room. Sometimes it's a scripture that rises in your heart. Sometimes it's a sudden understanding of something you couldn't make sense of before. Sometimes it's simply tears that flow without sadness, because your soul recognizes presence even when your mind doesn't. Heaven's whisper isn't about information, it's about intimacy. God doesn't wake you early because he needs your attention. He does it because he desires your affection. He knows your heart is quieter than. He knows your mind is less crowded. He knows you can finally hear him without the interference of the day. When heaven whispers before the world wakes, it's not just to tell you something new. It's to remind you that you're not walking alone. You see, revelation often comes wrapped in routine moments. The quiet before dawn is heaven's way of pulling you aside, to give you peace before pressure, perspective before problems, purpose before people. The day will bring noise, demands, and distractions, but those few minutes in the stillness fortify you for everything that follows. You don't have to start your day in chaos when you've already started it in communion. There's something powerful about those who rise early to seek God, not because it's ritual, but because it's relationship. They've learned that peace isn't found by accident, it's cultivated in stillness. They know that strength doesn't just come from rest, it comes from revelation, and revelation flows most freely when the soul is still. Sometimes heaven's whisper is corrective, showing you where your focus has drifted. Sometimes it's comforting, reminding you that the situation isn't as hopeless as it feels. And sometimes it's confirming, revealing that what you've been praying about is already in motion. But in every case, the whisper carries the same truth. You are seen, you are heard, and you are being guided. The beauty of heaven's whisper is that it doesn't need volume to have power. It only needs your attention. The world trains you to respond to noise, but God trains you to respond to nuance. In the silence before dawn, he speaks in ways that don't compete. He simply invites. He won't shout over the chaos. He'll wait for the quiet. And when you meet him there, something inside of you shifts. You begin to notice that the whisper doesn't end when the sun rises. It follows you. The peace that met you in prayer walks with you into your day. The clarity that came in stillness guides your decisions. The strength that filled you in solitude sustains you in the storm. What began as a moment of listening becomes a lifestyle of alignment. There's a reason Scripture often says, hey, who has ears, let him hear. Because hearing isn't about the noise around you, it's about the posture within you. Heaven's whispers aren't reserved for the spiritual elite. They're available to every soul that makes room for stillness. You can't hear God clearly if your life is constantly loud. Silence is the soil where revelation grows. So when you find yourself awake before dawn, don't rush to fill the moment. Don't grab your phone. Don't check your plans. Just breathe. There's a reason your spirit's stirred. Whisper back, speak, I'm listening. Those few words open the door for divine conversation. You may not hear an audible voice. You'll feel guidance rising inside you. Heaven's whisper will never confuse you. It will center you. It won't condemn. It will comfort. It won't rush. It will reassure. The truth is, God often speaks most clearly when the world is most silent, because clarity isn't found in noise. It's found in nearness. You quiet your mind. You create space for heaven to move. When you sit in the stillness, you begin to sense patterns and direction that business once blurred. Heaven doesn't need your perfection to speak, only your presence. And over time, you'll realize that those quiet awakenings were not interruptions. They were invitations. You weren't being disturbed, you were being drawn. The more you listen, the more you'll learn that heaven's whisper is not occasional, It's constant. Just the morning quiet makes it easier to hear. You'll begin to treasure those early hours. Not because they're easy, because they're sacred. The peace you find there will become your anchor. The guidance you receive there will become your compass. Presence you feel there will become your refuge. So when the world still sleeps and your eyes open before dawn, remember this: you're not waking up alone. Heaven has something to say. Let the whisper speak. Let the stillness teach. Let the morning become your meeting place with eternity. Because heaven's whisper before the world wakes isn't just a moment, it's a movement of grace. It's the voice that reminds you who you are before the world tries to tell you otherwise. It's the calm that steadies your spirit before chaos begins. It's the divine conversation that sets the tone for everything that follows. There's a quiet space between who you were and who you are becoming. A sacred pause where nothing seems to move, yet everything is shifting. Most people rush through that silence, desperate for progress, craving results, searching for signs. But transformation doesn't always announce itself with noise or movement. It begins in stillness. It begins in that quiet, hidden place where the world slows down and your soul finally catches up. We live in a culture that glorifies activity. Everyone wants to be busy, to be seen doing something, to prove their progress through constant motion. Spiritual growth doesn't follow the rhythm of the world. It follows the rhythm of heaven. And heaven often works in silence. God is not intimidated by stillness. He uses it because it's in the absence of noise that your heart becomes available for renewal. Stillness is not stagnation. It's preparation. It's where God breaks you open to build you again, stronger, wiser, deeper. The still season is when the old falls away quietly, piece by piece. You may not notice it at first, but change is happening in invisible layers. The habits that once held you lose their grip. The fears that used to define you begin to fade. In stillness, you don't just change, you transform. Transformation is not about adding more. It's about shedding what no longer fits. It's the unlearning before the relearning, the pruning before the growth, the surrender before the strength. And all of that happens in the quiet. When you're not distracted by performance, when you're not comparing yourself to others, when you finally stop running long enough to let God do the work inside you that movement can accomplish. In the stillness, you begin to hear things you missed before, the whisper of wisdom, the gentle nudge of conviction, the peace that passes understanding. You begin to sense what's real and what's noise, what's necessary and what's not. Transformation isn't about striving harder, it's about seeing clearer. And clarity always comes when you're still enough to listen. Stillness reveals what business hides. It uncovers motives, exposes patterns, and shows you where you've been operating out of fear instead of faith. It's uncomfortable because silence leaves you alone with yourself, with your thoughts, your wounds, your truth. But that confrontation is holy. God allows you to sit in stillness so that you can face what needs healing, not hide from it. You can't be transformed by what you refuse to acknowledge. That's why some seasons feel like nothing is happening, because transformation is happening within. You may not see the results yet. Your roots are deepening. You're being grounded in ways that will hold you when life shakes. The fruit will come later. The foundation is being built now. Stillness is the soil of strength. It's the place where faith takes form before it's visible. Think of a seed buried beneath the soil. It looks dead, forgotten, hidden. But inside, it's breaking open. Something sacred is happening beneath the surface. That's how God works in stillness. What feels like isolation is actually incubation. You are not buried, you are being planted. What's planted in stillness will rise in power. When God wants to transform a person, He often separates them first. He pulls them away from the noise, from the familiar, from the constant motion. Not to punish them, but to purify them. He isolates to illuminate. He removes distractions so you can hear His direction. You'll find that stillness is where you begin to rediscover who you are without the world's labels. It's where you remember that your worth isn't in your performance, but in your presence. Transformation in stillness also builds trust. You learn to rest even when you can't see the outcome. You begin to believe that progress can happen in peace. that not every forward step has to make noise. You start to understand that God does his best work in silence, because that's where faith grows. Real faith doesn't need proof, it simply waits. Waiting is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the ability to hold space for what's becoming without rushing to make it happen. Stillness teaches surrender, not the kind that gives up, but the kind that gives over. The kind that says, God, I trust you even when I don't understand you. That's where true transformation begins, not in striving, but in surrender. The stillness transforms your pace. You stop reacting to every storm and start responding from peace. You stop chasing validation and start walking in purpose. You stop needing constant reassurance because you begin to recognize that the same God who is silent is still sovereign. His quiet doesn't mean his absence. It means he's at work on levels your mind can't measure. In stillness, you begin to feel differently about time. You no longer see it as something you're running out of, but as something God is filling with purpose. Every moment of waiting becomes a moment of weaving, where he's aligning the right doors, right people, right opportunities. You realize that transformation isn't a single moment, it's a process. And every process requires patience. Stillness also restores your sensitivity. When you stop moving so fast, you start to notice small blessings again. The sound of your own breath, the beauty of morning light, the peace of being alive. You start to see God not just in miracles, but in the mundane. The ordinary becomes sacred. That's transformation, when your perspective shifts from chasing big signs to appreciating quiet grace. The stillness also strengthens your discernment. You begin to know when to speak and when to stay silent, when to act and when to wait, when to hold on and when to let go. This kind of wisdom can only be born in silence, because only in stillness do you hear the subtle tones of God's guidance. The world shouts, heaven whispers, and transformation happens when you start to recognize the difference. Some people fear stillness because it feels like losing control. The truth is, stillness is where control ends and faith begins. It's where you stop trying to fix everything and start allowing God to reshape everything. It's where striving turns into surrender and striving is replaced by trust. You don't have to know how it will all unfold. You just have to stay still long enough to let the transformation take root. And when it does, you'll find that the same stillness that once felt empty now feels empowering. The same silence that once felt lonely now feels full of presence. Because stillness was never meant to break you. It was meant to build you. Transformation doesn't come through hurry, noise, or chaos. It comes through quiet alignment, through the deep, patient work of God in the places no one sees. So when life slows down, don't panic. Things go silent. Don't assume you've been forgotten. You're in the process of becoming. You're being shaped, refined, and redefined. Stay still long enough to let the old version of you fall away. Stay still long enough to let peace do its work. Because one day, you'll step out of that quiet season with a strength you didn't know you had, a wisdom you didn't realize was growing, and a faith that can't be shaken. Transformation doesn't begin when life gets loud. It begins when you become still enough to hear the whisper of who you're becoming. The stillness isn't the delay, it's the design. It's not holding you back, it's holding you together. There comes a point in life when one awakening is not enough. You awaken once and it changes how you see the world. But then life shifts again. You face new seasons, new challenges, new levels of truth. And suddenly, you realize that awakening is not a single event, it's a continual process. You don't awaken once and stay awake forever. You awaken again and again, layer after layer, deeper and deeper, till your spirit fully aligns with what God has placed within you. Each awakening exposes what the last one couldn't. The first awakening may open your eyes to who you are. The next opens your heart to who God is. Another one reveals why you had to go through what you did. Yet another teaches you how to walk differently because of it. Every season of awakening builds upon the last, reshaping your understanding of purpose, healing, and truth. You see, growth doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds in waves. You awaken to new wisdom as you're ready for it. You begin to see what your past couldn't handle, what your old self wasn't equipped to carry. That's why God doesn't show you everything at once. Revelation comes in stages. Because if you saw the full picture too soon, you'd either run from it or rush it. Awakening happens gradually because transformation takes time. Awakening is not just an emotional moment of realization. It's a divine invitation to live differently. When your eyes open, your life must follow. It's not enough to see truth. You must align with it. Every time you awaken, something within you must shift. Old patterns must be released. Outdated beliefs must be challenged. Wounds you've carried must be healed. Awakening over awakening means that you keep evolving, refusing to stay where pain or fear once kept you trapped. The danger is believing that one awakening is enough. You may think, I've changed and settled there. But awakening is not a destination, it's a rhythm. Every time you think you've arrived, life will reveal another layer that needs light. That's grace. That's how God grows you, by continually awakening new depths of awareness within you. Each awakening begins with discomfort. Before light breaks, something shakes. You start to feel restless, unsettled, no longer at peace with what used to satisfy you. That's how you know another awakening is near. The conversations that once entertained you start to feel empty. The environments that once felt safe now feel small. The version of yourself that once fit perfectly begins to feel too tight. That's not confusion. That's divine disruption. God is stirring your spirit, preparing you for expansion. Awakening is not about gaining new information. It's about receiving new revelation. It's when truth hits your spirit in a way your intellect alone can't explain. You begin to see your life through a new lens, not as a series of random events, but as a carefully orchestrated journey. Every mistake, every delay, every detour begins to make sense in the light of your new awareness. And as you awaken, you also begin to notice how asleep you once were. You start to see how fear disguised itself as caution, how comfort masqueraded as peace, how survival kept you from truly living. That's what awakening does. It confronts illusions. It shakes you free from patterns that numbed you and identities that no longer reflect who you are becoming. But awakening is not gentle. It's raw, real, sometimes painful, because to awaken is to feel deeply. It's to face truths you avoided, to revisit wounds you buried, to take responsibility for what you've allowed and what you've ignored. That process can be uncomfortable, but it's necessary. You can't be fully alive while holding on to what kept you asleep. With each awakening, your relationship with God deepens. You stop seeing Him as distant and start recognizing His presence in everything, in your waiting, your mistakes, your silence, your growth. You begin to trust that even the closed doors were part of His design. That the heartbreaks weren't punishment, but positioning. Every loss carried a lesson that awakened something within you that comfort never could. Awakening over awakening means you stop chasing explanations and start embracing revelation. You begin to live from a higher awareness, one that recognizes divine timing, sacred pauses, and unseen purposes. You no longer see delays as denials or silence as absence. You understand that what feels still on the outside is often alive with movement on the inside. As you awaken repeatedly, your spirit becomes sharper. You start discerning energy more clearly. Who adds peace and who disrupts it? What aligns with your calling and what distracts it? You become less reactive, more grounded, more intentional. Because true awakening doesn't just change how you see, it changes how you move. Every new awakening also requires a letting go. You can't enter a new season carrying the mindset of the last one. You have to release old versions of yourself that no longer serve your growth. The relationships, habits, and beliefs that once fit your journey may no longer fit your calling. Awakening demands release. You can't walk into new dimensions holding on to old attachments. It's not easy to release what once felt familiar. You'll grieve it. You'll question it. You'll even try to go back to it. But once you've awakened, you can't unknow what you now understand. The light doesn't let you return to darkness comfortably. You may visit old spaces, but they won't feel the same because you are not the same. That's the mark of true awakening. The beauty of multiple awakenings is that each one makes you lighter. You lose the need to explain yourself. You stop proving and start being. You move from striving to surrender, from chasing to trusting, from reacting to responding. You begin to realize that peace isn't found in control, it's found in awareness. Awakening over awakening teaches you that everything is connected. Storm you resented becomes the soil for your growth. The silence that scared you becomes the space where you finally heard God clearly. The ending that broke you becomes the beginning that birthed you. You stop labeling experiences as good or bad and start seeing them as purposeful. Because once your eyes open spiritually, even pain becomes sacred. And yet, awakening is not a one-time victory. It's a lifelong journey. You'll awaken again next year, next season, next storm. You'll rise to new levels of faith, love, and purpose. What you understand today will expand tomorrow. That's how God keeps you evolving. Through awakening after awakening, each one refining you more into His image. The goal is not to stay comfortable. It's to stay conscious. To remain awake enough to recognize when you're being called higher. To stay sensitive to the gentle nudges of the Spirit that whisper, there's more. Because there's always more. More wisdom, more grace, more peace, more you to uncover. So don't fear the restlessness that precedes your next awakening. Don't resist the discomfort that signals growth. Every awakening will stretch you, but it will also strengthen you. Every realization will cost you something, but it will reward you with freedom. You are not meant to live one awakening and call it enough. You are meant to live awakening over awakening. Evolving from awareness to awareness, becoming more whole, more awake, more alive with every revelation. So when your spirit begins to stir, don't silence it. Lean into it. Listen, because that's not confusion, that's calling. That's heaven saying, it's time for the next level. And when you respond, when you allow each awakening to reshape you, you'll realize something powerful. You were never just waking up from something. You were waking up into something. Awakening over awakening. That's how transformation becomes a lifestyle. It's how you move from simply existing to truly living. And it's how you step again and again into the fullness of who you were always meant to be.